a world where we have everything and it's still not enough, we're often left wondering, is this really it?
Deep inside, you know there's more to life. You're ready to leave behind the old push your way through and claim the deeper, more meaningful life that's calling you.
That's what we invite you to explore with us.
We're your hosts,
Stephanie Allen
and Maren and this is the Soulful Leader Podcast.
Yay! Welcome to the Soulful Leader Podcast. I'm Stephanie and I'm here with Maren, and we're following up from our last podcast when we were speaking of how we lead others is how we lead ourselves. So what does that even mean? And what does that mean in the way of practicality? Like, how do you practice that? And so we're going to start off with a little bit of even looking inward. I know that could sound a little scary to some of you, but that's actually where the treasure is. And so when we think of leadership, again, defining that, it's like we're so longing for good leaders in this world. And we keep looking outside ourselves for role models and ways of being. And, you know, often we have these leaders that seem to be good at the beginning, and then they do something really bad and they mess up. And then we're like, oh, just another one. Nobody can really lead. And I think that's unfortunate, for one, because I think we're extremely hard on others because we're hard on ourselves. And that I'm not negating about things of lack of integrity and that kind of stuff. I'm just saying we do make mistakes, but there'll be a lot more grace if we could start to turn inward towards ourselves and look at how we love and lead ourselves.
And I think a lot of people, when I talk to them, they're like, oh, I'm not a leader. Right? And part of that may be because we are so hard on leaders of like, I don't want to own that. I don't want to claim that title, because that's scary. That's, now I'm responsible for somebody else.
Well, we also take on projections from others too, right? And I've worked with people, and myself included, is like people think they know who you are, or they'll project onto you what you shoulda, coulda, woulda, ought to do. And how, and so many times people say, I don't want to be a leader because I don't want to be projected onto. I don't want to be torn down, or how do I protect myself? So I have amazing artists and musicians who don't want to get out into the world because they're afraid of like being projected onto and not really seen. So we're talking about that kind of a leadership of now going in and seeing ourselves and being able to cultivate a deep well of love and resiliency from within, so that, people are going to project. That's what we do to each other. That's how we see each other. But how do you have that resiliency so that you can still walk a very loving, kind path with yourself and be present to others?
And I just need to add that whether you want to claim the title of leader or not, you are a leader.
You're a leader to someone.
If somebody, right, the minute you impact somebody's life, you're a leader. That means that you have a leadership role with somebody, which means, so rather than doing it kicking and screaming and or ignorantly saying, nope, 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 not me, let's do it with awareness and consciousness and willingness to say, oh, I messed up. I mean, like if each of us took on that responsibility of saying, you know what, I'll own my own leadership role and I will say, oops, I messed up. What a different world we would live in.
So when we talk about leading others, coming back to that as well, we have, how do we lead ourselves? So again, coming back to that question, right? And so there's a whole world inside yourself. There are little yous. There are childlike parts of yourself. There are teenager parts of yourself. There's adult parts of yourself. There's the inner critics of yourself. There's artists. You have an inner artist. You have an inner lover. You have an inner business person. You have all of this incredible, this is like Carl Jung's world of archetypes within ourselves. How are you leading those parts within you?
Well, and we experience that because when you show up to your lover, you show up differently than you do when you show up to your boss. You're not the same person. those are two different parts of you that show up. And that's different than the person who shows up and goes home and meets up with mom and dad. That's different from the person who then, has children. It's like we have all these parts of ourselves.
right.
And it's not just theory. You guys have all experienced it.
Yeah, so we have both light and darkness. So here's a wonderful practice to start leading yourself. What we're speaking of here is a little bit of shadow work, going into the darkness to bring your light. So if you have someone, which I'm sure you do, that just absolutely irritates the blazes out of you, that completely annoys the crap out of you. Like you might say, I don't like this person because they're this, they're that, they're blah, 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 blah. I mean, it could be someone who's a family member, a friend, a colleague. It could be, a leader of a country. It could be whatever. And why I'm saying that is that what you see in that person is actually yourself. Now, I know some of you are going, are you kidding me? I am not that. And the more you say, I am not that, the more you are.
That's
and it's in
so
the dark.
key. It is. So would you rather have it, other people see it in you because you're denying it, or be willing to look at, what if it's true? What if you just entertained it and said, what if it's true? Even in the littlest corner of a part of me is like that. And that littlest, I don't like that littlest corner of the part of me. So I have shoved it and I have denied it. And now that's why I don't like this person.
Right. And the more we shove it and deny it, actually, it gets more power. It literally gains more power. So let's use an example of, like, say, a murderer. Say, I'm like, I am so not a murderer. Stephanie, what are you talking about? I do not murder. That is not me. I would never do that. And I'd say, okay, God willing, may that never happen. I hope it doesn't. But if we take it to another level deeper inside ourselves, it's like, where are you killing your dreams? Where are you murdering your self-worth and self-esteem? Like, we do these on a different type of level. There might be small little nuances, but as you start to go in and start to bring love and kindness to those parts, to be curious about, so let's say you're murdering a dream that you have. Maybe you've had a dream all your life and you haven't even told anybody because you're like, I just can't even handle somebody else like rejecting it or murdering it. Because we do that symbolically. So I'll just murder it first. And then that way it's dead within me and no one has to know.
Then it's safe.
And it's safe, but it's not. What's happening is that there's a part of you that's buried within that is actually going to create toxicity within you. It's a little owie, which becomes like anything. If you have a little owie and you keep picking at it or you don't allow it to heal, it gets worse.
Right. I think of it as like you ignore it. You don't tend to it at all. It festers.
It festers, exactly. So if you take out maybe a piece of paper and just write down something that, and it could be a secret in your life. It could be a dream. It could be a quality you don't even want to acknowledge that you have. Something that, that you look at that and you can go inside and go, what if I could make friends with that part? What if I could be curious and go, why? Why am I afraid to live that dream? What would happen if I let that dream live? What would happen? Because sometimes we go, well, then I would die. And often it's not that you would die. Sometimes it's because it's the ego would die.
Yeah, the part like this current identity that I have.
And the ego, by the way, is the murderer, by the way. So it's like, and why this is important. It's so important. One, it's going to give you so much more energy, emotion. A lot of times there's emotions that come up, but you are going to have so much life force when you start to do this. It's going to feel exhausting at first, but I can guarantee if you keep on, it's like going through hell. If you don't, instead of sit down in hell, keep on going out through the other side and you'll move right through it. So it's the same idea. It's like, if you can really work through this, you're going to come out the other side with a lot more energy. But even more importantly, as leaders, then as soon as we start to work within that part within ourselves, our heart opens. And you are less judging towards yourself and towards others. You actually lead differently.
It makes space.
you make space to understand why someone does what they do or doesn't do what you thought they would do. You start to understand and you're like, geez, I think if I was in that situation, I'd probably do the same thing. Or I really truly believe that people that we are so fired up and irritated about are actually waking us up so that we can go, not to do something outside, although there is a time for that too, but that it wakes us up enough that we can look inside and say, how can I be better? What could I do? Where am I doing this to myself or to another? And then make the change. And as you make those changes, as small as they are, Mother Teresa always said that. She said, it's not about doing big things. It's about doing small things with great love.
Yeah.
And that's first, we have to start with ourselves. And that is not selfish. That is not narcissist. It's about caring, because if your intention is, okay, I really want to help this because I want to show up differently in the world and not reactive.
And that's the only way you can show up differently in the world is to look inside. Mm-hmm. And not, if you don't want to be reactive as a leader, the fastest path to that is doing what you just said, of looking at, there's a part of me that I'm reacting to inside of me instead of I'm reacting to something out there. You can't fix, we can't fix out there.
We can't fix anything
in here.
Yes, we can readjust.
We can
change and we can evolve something inside ourselves for sure.
And I want to add that the opposite is also true. So what 100%. I mean by that is, when you see somebody that you think is stunning, whether it's physically or because of something that they've done, and you're impressed by them and you're like, oh my God, I just think that's the most amazing being. Mm-hmm. It's because there's a part of you that is just like that person that has those qualities.
Yeah, and to go inside and claim those too, because you cannot see it if it's not already in you. For both ways, for light or for darkness.
Right.
There's always a gift.
Yeah.
So a great practice with that one, I was like, is looking in the mirror and practicing seeing your luminosity, your greatness, your beauty, not from an egotistical, but can you, and this is a hard practice to do, to stand in front of a mirror. Naked is optional, but standing in front of a mirror and really staying present to what you see, because you're really not your body. Like, it's mirrored there, but can you see beyond to the soul that is looking out without harshness and judgment or pain or any of that, but to actually literally find the love and the gratitude without going away.
What I love is, and you and I have talked about this before, say, for example, you really want attention from your boss. You want your boss to give you kudos for something that you've done, or you want your partner to do the same thing, whatever. You're looking for that in the outer world. This is a great time to do that in the mirror. Because if you can't give it to yourself, you can't receive it from them. So even if they actually may be giving you those things and you can't receive it because you can't give it to yourself.
Yeah, you're pushing it away.
You train people on how to interact with you. We all do. We train people of like what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Mm-hmm. So as you change how you interact with yourself, it will change how people interact with you. Mm-hmm. It's not about them, it's about you. That's a hard thing for us to understand.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so as you start to give it to yourself, next thing you know, you become filled and then you're overflowing. And now you're able to give it to another also without being attached to their response. So if somebody else pushes it away, it's okay. It's like you can recognize it, you can see that, but you have space to even be at peace to wherever they're at.
And you become attractive. Mm-hmm. So you will attract those things that you now push away. And it takes that work of like, okay, I need to be able to give it to me. Mm-hmm. Once I can give it to me, then I, like you said, I love that word. I'm full. I'm like, oh, I have that. And, it's like attracts like.
Mm-hmm.
So when I feel good about myself, I will attract that to me. That's where I become attractive to other people who feel good about me, feel good about themselves. When I don't feel good about myself, I will also attract that. So
Yeah.
now I have people who don't feel good about themselves and they will mirror that to me. So I will hear that they don't feel good about me. And then I'll take that personally. And it's like we get to choose which spiral we go on. We can go on the downward spiral
Mm-hmm.
or we can choose the upward spiral. It takes work. It takes I'm going to stop and go look in the mirror and get to the point where like I can say this to myself.
Yeah, because, everything in the outer world is a mirror of our internal world.
Yeah.
So we can't change the external world because everybody's involved changing that, but we can change our internal world, which actually does change the external. So if something is coming in your life that's mirroring to you something wonderful, and can you receive it? Can you say thank you? Can you say, okay, there must be a part within me that is attracting this, and I want to acknowledge that. I want to nurture that, and I want to say thank you. Just as if there's something that's really harsh or difficulty, and that could be watching or listening to the news or seeing something on media that just really irritates you and to be able to say, okay, there's something that just got stirred up in me that's being awakened. Can I go in and be present to that part? Because whatever irritated me in the outer world about that person or about that thing or whatever it is, then can I go inside and lovingly be present to it and ask it, what does it need from me? Where am I doing that within myself? Not from a place of shame, but a place from curiosity and wonder, and a place of being the antidote, or being able to then reclaim a whole new story, which is going to project out into the outer world a completely different thing.
Yeah. And it changes who we are. So connecting to, I think of it like this. It's like we're connecting to the future of who we want to become.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of living our lives the way we normally live our lives, which is who I was raised to be is who I am. My past defines who I am today. And that's a common concept.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's also true is that the future has a wave that is creating the past, and they kind of meet. So you've got the past there's a wave from the past that creates the future. There's also a future, and physics is now showing that the wave from the future is actually stronger than the wave from the past. So what that means for us in this inner work that we're doing of leading ourselves is we get to connect, or an option for us is to connect to that future self, the one who likes us, the one who thinks we're enough, the one who's done all the stuff, the one who, all of the things that we were just talking about, instead of trying to meet the me in the mirror from my past self that's not going to believe what I'm telling myself, I can actually choose to do it from my future self and say, that's who I'm going to be. That's who I want to be. The woman who believes that I'm good enough, that I have enough, all of the, whatever the story is that's come up.
Yeah. And you invite that future here and now to guide you.
Yeah.
To say, if I'm living that in my future, a healthy, happy, fulfilling, contributing life, I'm living the best version of myself, true to my heart, bring that self here now and say, okay, what would that self, surround yourself, how would that self see out through my eyes? How would they speak out through my mouth? What would they take in through my ears? What choices would they make? Would they do something or stop something? Ask them, build a relationship to that future self and say, all right, future self, I know you're loving. I know you're kind. I know you're living an extraordinary life. What choice would you make? How would you approach this? Guide me. And I find a great practice at nighttime is to presence that and then allow that future self to hold you and say, come to me in my dreams and give me guidance in a way that I know that you have left me signs and wonders, and come in a way that's gentle and loving,
Right.
and obvious. I always say obvious. I want to know.
I like that. Oftentimes we think in terms of morning practices. I have my morning practices that I do, and we just collapse into bed exhausted and just like, oh, I just need to go to sleep. What a wonderful way to end the day, to presence our future self, who is loving and kind and surrounded by amazing beings and living the life of our dreams, and start to embody that. So Einstein, I know I've said this on this podcast more than once, that Einstein has said that imagination is more important than knowledge. So all of that stuff that you know about yourself comes from your past, and it's not true anyway. So imagination,
and nor is it sometimes relevant to where you're going.
It's most of the time it won't be. So imagining your future self will put you in alignment with great beings like Einstein and you in the future. And then falling asleep to that, oh my gosh, that's a great practice. I love that.
So these are great practices. Take something that irritates you or someone that irritates you and find where you might be doing that within yourself, to yourself, or to another, maybe unconsciously, maybe consciously. And then also doing the same for someone who's like really an exemplar or a mentor or someone you really look up to, and find that also in yourself so that you're claiming both light and darkness and transforming it so that you're integrating it. And then also standing in front of the mirror and really holding presence. It's very, very emotional. I will tell you this, it's not an easy thing. And maybe you start with just 10 seconds and then you just keep building up to see if you can really be present with love. Not with hate or shame or any of that, but just to keep coming back to love, keep coming back to love. And then the last practice is really tuning into the future that wants to happen and yourself that's actually living it, a fulfilled, happy, joyful, leadership, contributing life. Bring that self back and have that self hold you and guide you and ask it questions, offer it.
I love that. If you're interested in more practices like that, or for us to come in and work with your team to get everybody on the same page, certainly contact us. You can find us on Facebook and on LinkedIn under Soulful Leaders. And you can find us on our website, the Soulful Leader Podcast, or on our business website, which is tslp.life. And we will have all of these kind of written out in the show notes. So if you are driving or not able to take notes, go ahead to our show notes and you'll find all the information there. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Soulful Leader Podcast.
And that wraps up another episode of the Soulful Leader Podcast with your hosts, Stephanie Allen
and Maren Oslack. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to dive deeper, head over to our website at thesoulfulleaderpodcast.com.
Until next time.